Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with jazz pianist, accordionist, and composer Ben Rosenblum on the 2023 album A Thousand Pebbles. The album's diverse influences include Bulgarian vocal polyphony, northern Brazilian party music, Afro-Caribbean rhythms, and traditional Irish music. Musical traditions collide and commingle, ignite, and recombine, coalescing into striking, expressive new forms of jazz. Over the course of this interview with Ben, he's an old friend of the show. We cover the post-pandemic world, this new project, the future, and so much more. Enjoy.
Excellent. It's great to talk to you again. I think this is our third time.
I think so, yeah. I really appreciate always.
Yeah, me too, man. I got to say, on the record and off the record and every sort of the record that we talk about here, I absolutely love what you do. You bring a textured richness and history and fierceness and absolute tradition, yet a future that we can see in jazz that's just all kind of mounded together into just an audio delight. So I'm always so happy to talk to you, and I love what you do.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot to me.
Absolutely. Before we get into this, I know that, our conversations kind of arc into pandemic times, and we were all trying to figure it out. But now that we're kind of opening up, coming out, you have a new album, live shows are happening, let's kind of pull back a little bit. And I want to know, how are you doing now? How did you survive it? And how good does this album feel now that the world is waking up?
Oh, absolutely. Of course, now, I think last year, 2022, was really my first year of uninterrupted touring since the pandemic. And first of all, it just feels so great to be traveling again and getting to see a lot of my friends who are in different parts of the world. And, getting to play music in front of a live audience it's really essential to what we do. Without the audience, the music loses a lot of its meaning. So, it's been wonderful. I've been very lucky even through the pandemic. I had a lot of work online, teaching and doing some performances online, and I have no complaints. Actually, recently I was doing, all through the pandemic, I was doing live stream concerts every week, and then one of the people who tuned in from Japan, Yoko, she ended up moving to the U.S. and we're married now. So I owe a lot to the pandemic and, that time. I'm very grateful for it, and I feel very much newly inspired now that I'm performing for live audiences again.
You found love, and that's the thing I think from my end of things is many people and musicians that I spoke to over the pandemic, they hear this exuberance and to kind of relish the silver linings that went through such a grim period in history.
Absolutely. But I would say the new album thematically, I feel like it's very tied to the experience of the pandemic. It's a lot about nostalgia, about kind of looking back on a time that's fundamentally changed. And that's both from my experiences of composing music that reflects on childhood. It's also composing influenced by other people's experiences of that, like The Bell from Europe is based on a poem by Weldon Keys that ties into post-World War II Europe and the feeling of loss from that. And also the one arrangement I did is a song called Song of the Sabia that is the lyrics that were written by Chico Buarque are written from a point of view of being in exile and looking back on pre-dictatorship Brazil. So kind of throughout the album, there's this sense, I'm not sure it was intentional or subconscious, but just thematically, all the music seems to tie together around this idea of kind of nostalgic reflection.
The one thing that I realized, too, over that time where the pandemic was happening and musicians were at home, there was a part of me that kept thinking, and I heard from musicians as well, is that once we get out of this, the material that we produce while we're in this, kind of shutdown era Did you ever think that, like, man, I'm going to put some really good stuff together on paper that becomes music that I'm going to release when this is all over with? Was that ever kind of a thought process for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You know, you have to always keep your sights on when you're going to be able to share the music with different people. I feel like that continued to give me the inspiration to keep writing. I feel also I was lucky to, even during the pandemic, find some opportunities later in the pandemic in 2021 to travel a little bit. And similarly to before the previous album, Kites and Strings, when I took a week in Croatia to compose and write some material. And some of that material ended up on this record as well, you know, heavily arranged after a couple of years of reflection on it. But I got another opportunity to do that in between shows in Europe. This time in Berlin, I found a small Airbnb with a grand piano in a woodshed, a literal woodshed. So, you know, I always value those moments of reflection. The pandemic was an extended period of reflection, but I feel like even in the course of back to full-time touring, busy life, you know, I always want to make sure that I find moments to have unstructured time and just have a period of time to look back. That's when I feel like all the ideas that have been kind of brewing from all of the different influences of what I do, all of that comes together.
So, you know, the one thing about reviewing and listening to albums is, you know, there's a line between kind of that journalistic tie that I have, and then there's another line where I'm a fan, and there's certain times where I just simply fall into fan, and this album is definitely one of those for me. So I'm curious, you know, you've heard my take on it, but from your perspective, what are you hoping ultimately the listener gets from this album?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I'm so glad the music had that kind of effect. For me, I never know exactly what the listener will feel, and I think that's part of the beauty of creating music that's designed for other people to listen to, is that you put something of your own story into every piece, and then other people come to the music with their own life experiences and find things in their life that resonate with those pieces. And in general, fundamental terms, the things that really speak to me are always just trying to write strong, memorable melodies and bass rhythms in traditions that I find moving, whether that's straight-ahead jazz or Irish music or Bulgarian music or Brazilian or Afro-Caribbean. There's so many traditions that I've had really fortunate opportunities to learn from people who are from all over the world and who are really fluent in those traditions, and kind of get deep into them and then share my version of those filtered through my upbringing in American jazz music.
So, you know, I would imagine with you, as frequently as you put music out, you're already moving on to the next project. How have you seen your production go up now that things are opening up and the world's in a new place?
You know, things have definitely been a lot busier, and that's it cuts both ways, because I have less time to sit down and write and you know, do the kind of deep practice that I was doing during the pandemic. But also it gives me so much more inspiration because I'm playing with so many more people, I'm seeing so much more music and traveling to many more new places. So when I do have those moments to sit down and compose, this month, April, has been a little less busy, so I've had a couple days that I could just block out to really do nothing but compose and arrange. And the ideas just flow immediately. You know, I find that I already have probably half album's worth of new ideas for the sextet that came out just in the past couple weeks. Of course, going back to some old material as well, which I love to do because it's almost like a snapshot of a different version of me every time I go back to a composition I wrote many years ago, and then, finding multiple perspectives to write from. But yeah, I'm well on my way to recording the next sextet record, and I also have some unreleased material, solo piano and trio, that I'm not quite sure how it's going to be released yet, but I'm very excited to share that as well.
As people, as artists, when we live through historical events that go on, it has a way of changing us. And, I remember when 9/11 happened, there was a mood and mode, especially in New York, that changed the people, and obviously things kind of fell away. But it seems as though with this pandemic, there has been a level of appreciation, not only from the musicians to be on stage, but from the fans to see that music. I feel as though this is a permanent thing. Do you get that sense that this is something that's not going to fall away?
I feel very much that audiences have been so appreciative and so warm in the post-pandemic, times. I really feel like it's been very moving to see how the music affects people and how people don't take it for granted. I don't know what the future will bring. I think people settle back into their routines gradually. But I do think that I've noticed in a lot of my friends and a lot of my audience members just a newfound appreciation for experiences, for shared interaction, for the being a little more present in the moments of listening and having a communal space. I think that that's something that will last.
So, Ben, if anyone out there wants to pick up the new album, Thousand Pebbles, find out about brand new shows that are coming up, anything pertaining to your world, even previous albums, where's the best place for people to go? Absolutely.
I have a website. My name's Ben Rosenblum, Rosenblum. And if you go to benrosenblummusic.com, you can see links to purchase digital copies. You can also find my email to ask me about physical copies, or you can see my show schedule, and I, of course, sell my CDs at all my shows. So, I've been trying to travel a lot more with the larger ensemble recently with some degree of success in booking. Of course, traveling, I've been traveling many years with my trio, but with the six-piece group, it's a little bit more logistics involved. So I've really been working on finding opportunities for that. We have trips in the Midwest planned and in Florida, and I'm working on a trip to the West Coast as well. And hopefully we'll be over in Kansas City at some point. I actually have been reaching out for a trio tour for the fall in the area, so I'm hoping to get over there. If not in the fall, then sometime soon. So, benrosenblummusic.com. The album's also available on all the streaming websites, but if you want to support, you can find all the information to do that on my website.
Yeah, we would love to see you in Kansas City. Ben, again, it's great to catch up with you. I appreciate your time. Best of luck with the album, live shows, and everything as the world opens up.
Oh, thank you so much. It's wonderful to catch up with you, too. Hope to one day meet you in person as well if I make it over to your area.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York City, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. Thanks to Ben for his time, energy, and cool. If you want to hear more interviews, you can find Neon Jazz interviews on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to us at YouTube, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to theneonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.